Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old 4th Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
Thank you for listening on whatever device you do. America One Radio, we've got their app. We've got Progressive Voices, their app. Also via TuneIn, AmericaOneRadio.com, or if you listen via podcast, thank you for doing so. Maya Holman at the Georgia Recorder has been doing some excellent reporting on a bill that is making its way now through the General Assembly session. We've got the final day of the session, and one bill in particular just seems to be set up to aid current President Donald John Trump and his 17 co-defendants. It's SB 244, which takes a wrongful conviction compensation bill that was making its way through the House and sort of bastardizes it to aid Trump and his co-conspirators. And Maya Holman writing in the Georgia Recorder, I'll include this in the show notes at ronshowatl.com. SB 244, sponsored by State Senator Brandon Beach, name sound familiar, an Alpharetta Republican and staunch Trump ally who was recently appointed by the president to serve as U.S. Treasurer. This SB 244 originally aimed solely at allowing criminal defendants to recoup their legal costs in the event that the prosecuting attorney in their case was disqualified as a result of improper conduct. I mean, it's such a specific bill, right? The bill, Beach said, was inspired by Trump's election interference case in Georgia, in which Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis was disqualified after an appeals court judge found that her romantic relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade created a, quote, significant appearance of impropriety. Now, I've argued on this show for a long time. Mistake on her part, his part, sloppiness, absolutely. Impropriety? No. It's not like they were working on opposite sides of the case. That's impropriety. The fact that they were dating doesn't seem to create impropriety. Nonetheless, it's insulting that people we know who were obviously guilty, but because of the machinations of politics, namely Trump running for re-election and receiving near unqualified immunity while serving as president, never mind the fact that using the campaign to run for president to delay justice, and now, because he's in the office and can't be prosecuted, you see Republicans hurrying to do whatever they can to scuttle these investigations, these cases, and on top of that, receive compensation for legal fees from taxpayers. It's insulting. Joining me to discuss, and I think possibly fume with me on this, is cousin, Representative Shea Roberts. How are you, cousin? How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Ron?
I'm good. I insist that we have to be second, third cousins in some way, shape, form, or fashion because I'm a Georgia boy. I grew up in Georgia. I had some cousins up in Northwest Georgia. We've got people all over the state. So I insist we probably are somehow related. We just don't know how yet. And I'm not going to go spending my money at 23andMe anymore to find out. But this...
Didn't I hear they're going bankrupt? So I don't know that you can.
Yeah. I don't know what I want to give them money right now. SB 244 has me furious, and I partially blame you because I saw you on social media, discussing this bill, and I thought, wait, this is still a thing? I can't believe this is still a thing. I thought a lot of these bills had died, not making crossover, and these zombie bills sometimes pop their heads up again. The fact that they're using a wrongful conviction bill, which is supposed to, or by design, is supposed to compensate individuals who are exonerated or wrongly convicted, and that this has the fingerprints of Donald Trump on it. It's just insulting.
So actually, the original SB 244 did pass out of the Senate, and it was unanimously supported by the Democratic senators because they were told that amendments were coming when it came to the House that would exempt Donald Trump and his co-defendants out of potentially requiring Fulton County to pay them. That did not happen. So in subcommittee, I immediately looked at it. And so that's why there'll be a discrepancy on Democrats voting for it in the Senate, but they will not be voting for it if it comes back to them. But yes, we got into full committee meeting last week and learned that they had attached a bill that House Democrats have been working on, I mean, for years. And I'm told, so the way wrongfully convicted and wrongfully incarcerated people have been compensated in the past is these individual bills every year that we have to approve each one individually.
Right.
And I'm told this year, again, I think this is the third year in a row, that those individual compensation bills have not been paid out. This bill that they've attached onto SB 244, I forget the number, it's House bill it started with, but it's Katie Dempsey and Scott Holcomb, the bipartisan bill, and it would put a formula into the code, and it would be part of the appropriations process so that we don't have to do these individual bills every year. And it's been thwarted the last, I think, 3 years. We can't get it over the finish line. And so to me, when I got in and read that, it just made me nauseous that here is a bill that is political retribution at its finest. I mean, SB 244, it is punitive. When Senator Beach was asked, how do you feel about this is going to hurt your own constituents in Fulton County? He literally said they should have thought about that before they voted for her. And so this is leaving his Senate buddy and his new boss, handing them a nice little financial gain from Fulton County taxpayers as he's headed out to Washington. And it's just gross. And so you've got the case that hasn't even been fully adjudicated yet, with a DA that's been disqualified for something completely unrelated to guilt or innocence, and that's still being appealed. And you're going to tack it on and try and pass it on the backs of these people who've been wrongly caged for sometimes decades, lost years of their lives with their families. Yeah. It's disgusting.
As I let up before I put you on the call here, it's just sort of gross that we're talking about people who, in Trump's case in particular, the only reason his case didn't get prosecuted in a timely manner was because he sought to gum up the process in the first place by running for president, by using his campaign schedule to delay, using the Fonnie Willis Nathan Wade thing. To me is just irrelevant. This impropriety argument makes no sense when they're on the same side of the case in the first place. And
it was an appearance of impropriety.
Yeah, exactly.
If Judge McAfee had made a determination of it was a conflict of interest or it was improper, it wasn't, that would have been one thing. But this appearance of impropriety is just, it's not a real thing. And so, but I agree with you. I mean, once again, they're going to get away with it, and they can't just move along and get away with it. They've got to pour salt in the wound and try and charge Fulton County millions of dollars. Yeah. And this is what I feel like Republicans are doing. It's like they're using their power to be punitive, or to essentially they're saying it doesn't matter who you vote for, because if we don't like what your leaders are doing, we're going to find ways to punish you or to take that power away from you. It's happening. It's been happening year after year since I've been in the session, whether it's through redistricting, where they used to go through a local delegation and they decided to draw Cobb County and Gwinnett counties maps, as a general bill, which has never been done in the history of the House that I'm aware of. I mean, they just change the rules as they go along.
Yeah. This bill should have been renamed "Own the Libs, Take Their Lunch Money," because that's essentially what I think the emphasis is here. It's an opportunity to take a victory lap and snatch our lunch money out of Fulton County taxpayers' coffers in the process.
It is, yeah. The only reason this law would do this law is going to be used hardly ever, right? Because when are you going to have a case where a DA is dismissed for improper conduct?
It's so specific. Yeah, it's so specific.
DA doesn't take over, right? The only reason is because no prosecutor is going to take on the sitting president of the United States if she's disqualified.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they wrote that he's admitted, he's acknowledged that is the purpose of this bill for him.
I guess we can be thankful that they're not racing to rename the airport after the guy or something like that. I mean,
oh my God, please stop.
Yeah. Right? Oh
you
my
just
God.
put that into the universe, Ron. You don't need to do those things.
I mean, but they're literally trying to do that in Washington, D.C. They're trying to rename Dulles International Airport after the guy. And I mean, we also have another zombie bill where they've revived a bill that was set to honor the state being one of the original 13 colonies. Now that's going to be a Clarence Thomas statue. I mean, come on. I mean, do we really have to keep honoring people who have so many egregious wrongs in their past? And I could go on, but in the meanwhile, let's reset the table real quick. We're with Representative Shea Roberts, who still has a few more days in legislative session. We'll talk more about how to be mentally prepared to be in the position she's in, or Democrats in general, when the Ron Show returns. Feel free to call the show, text the show if you'd like, leave a comment, 404-919-2725. Representative Shea Roberts giving us a good dose of time this morning before another long day, one of the final 4 days in the Georgia General Assembly session for 2025. Listen, it's hard for me to get up some days just to do this show because of so much that's coming out in headlines now. I don't know how y'all get up and go to the Gold Dome. Some days I just don't, because when I go back and look at some of the things that you guys have talked about in committee or bills that are coming up, it's like, how do you get up and storm into the Capitol to fight with vigor another day? It has to be exhausting.
Oh, I'm so tired, Ron. But the reality is, if we're not down there and shining a light on some of this, imagine what they could get away with. But you're right. It's like being in constant battle mode because, for example, I got to that committee meeting where 244 and the compensation bill had been attached. And we're listening to another bill, and I'm trying to think about how am I going to question, what am I going to say? You know, I'm focused on the other. And there were I think the criminalizing librarians bill was on that agenda, all these things, right? And so I wasn't even paying attention to, I think it was SB 204. And all of a sudden I hear Representative Powell say something about preemption and guns, and the light bulb goes off. And I race to look at that bill, right? And because these bills are being sat in front of us, substitutes with sometimes very comprehensive bills with new language that we have to look at on the spot and figure out what they're up to. And thank God I'm a lawyer, because this is what I do for a living, is look at statutes. So they had attached Colton Moore's gun expansion bill, where he's just indignant that Van Johnson and Savannah passed a civil penalty if your gun is left in the car and it's stolen and used in a crime. I think it's like $250 or $5. I mean, it's something minor, but they're ready to punish, once again, a Democratic mayor who's just trying to keep the community safe.
Right.
But if I hadn't heard those two words and hadn't been paying attention, nobody else picked up on it. We wouldn't have at least gotten to say something negative and voted out, because it was attached to Senator Jones's bill from the minority leader. And so this is the stuff that they do nonstop. And especially in these last, on the House side, we move slower in the first 28 days. We have more time to deliberate on some of these bills. And then after crossover, because all of the really extreme stuff is coming from the Senate, by the time it's read twice and gets to a committee, we're down to 8 days and then all these tricks start coming in. You are correct. It is exhausting. This is not the way to legislate either. This is not good for the people.
No, I agree 1,000%. I kept my eye on this one bill, and I can't remember which side of the chamber it was making its way through, and I guess it just didn't make crossover. But I'm still, like I said, these zombie bills come back to life. There was the one bill, I'm trying to remember who authored it, that was going to punish cities for not, I guess, in some way, shape, form, or fashion, by whatever measure, addressing panhandling and homelessness well enough that now property tax owners would be able to come back and get a compensation or a refund if they fell. And I'm like, why don't you just say that this is just targeted at Atlanta? That's literally, you're targeting major cities, larger cities, who of course are magnets for homelessness through no fault of their own. They just are. And the solution is to take more money from the jurisdiction that is already overwhelmed with homelessness. These are the sorts of things that just make me scratch my head. Like,
Right.
I don't see legislation coming from the other side of the aisle often enough that actually addresses tangible problems with real solutions. And it's disheartening. I mean, that we're at this place in 2025 where it just seems like there's so much nefarious intent. And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or just paint, blue good, red bad. I'm just saying, like, I'm having a hard time finding positive legislation that actually addresses real problems with solutions from the right side of the aisle.
I agree. Yesterday we were in session from 10 until I think we gavelled out around 7:15, and I'm trying to think if we actually passed a bill that I was excited about. There wasn't a whole, I mean, of course, SB1 passed, which was, all the targeting trans community is just exhausting.
Yeah.
I just feel so bad for them. But
on Trans Day of Visibility, too. It's almost as if that was on purpose.
I guarantee you it was. They do that. It is sick how they do that stuff sometimes. But the rest of the bills, there was a bill, I don't even remember the number, where it talks about that you can't go into a school and get information on students.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know the impetus of that bill?
Well, I understand that it has something to do with a legislative race last year, specifically. I want to say this has something to do with Sean Still, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And he was in the chamber watching this bill. And if you get an opportunity to go back and watch Stacey Evans' it was so right on point, because if you dig into the bill, it is not solving a problem, that it's not doing anything if you find a problem. And it was just a waste of over an hour when we could have been doing real good for Georgians. And the problem is that we feel like our only option is to, cause delay, because the more we talk on a bad bill or a dumb bill, the less harm they can do between now and signing die. And that is literally Democrats' one tool that we utilize. But by the end of the day, one of my colleagues and I looked at each other and we're like, what did we accomplish for all those hours today? It was just such a waste of time.
And it's really it's got to be hard to hit the campaign trail and as Democrats even make up ground or try and win over seats when all you have to run on is, well, we gummed up the process and made, really terrible legislation not as bad. It's really hard to quantify that and to rally around that.
Well, I think and we're getting better. And I think this leadership team is doing an excellent job. We're working more with the Senate Dems. We're more cohesive in our messaging. And what we're trying to do is show Georgians this is what we would do if we got in.
Yeah.
We would expand Medicaid. We would work on affordable housing. We would pass common sense gun safety legislation that a majority of the state wants. We would protect our natural resources like the Okefenokee. We would make sure everybody had an abundance of freedom to, control their bodies, to love who they want, to be who they want. And so I think, all we can, I point to Minnesota, the first year that they had the majority. Oh my gosh. I mean, what they accomplished in 1 year was one term was amazing. And so that's kind of where I work hard to help flip seats every session. After I flipped mine in 2020, last year I started a PAC, United for Georgia Women, and I raised money to help flip seats. And we did better down ticket than anywhere else in the country. Like most states either lost seats or didn't gain any seats. We at least gained some seats. So we're going to keep fighting, because I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And if we can take the majority in one chamber, it forces them to at least talk to us. They can't get something done without us. We're already seeing that power with every seat we take, that leverage increase, because anything that requires a 2/3 vote, we've gotten really good at utilizing those, kind of holding them hostage until we get some bills across. I don't think we've ever gotten 17 bills across at crossover. I think it's always been 10 or less. And so I don't know if you saw, I've been posting a scorecard of how many bills they've passed out of the House versus Democrat bills out of the House. And I think yesterday we were up to 240, let's see,
Wow.
243 to 17.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, isn't that crazy? So we have 44% of the chamber, but we've only gotten 17, but that's just out of the House. That's not signed by the governor. We won't have that many signed by the governor.
Right. We're with Representative Shea Roberts. In fact, I want to talk a little bit about some of the inspiration. You're providing a vision for a democratic blueprint, and it made me think of the next topic of discussion I wanted to hit you up for while I had a few minutes. We'll continue that conversation when the Ron Show returns on America One Radio, Progressive Voices via TuneIn.
This is the Ron Show on America One Radio.
Representative Shea Roberts, kind enough to join us, and I know she's got another long day ahead. Sunny days coming up on Friday, and so there's legislation getting pushed, in front of faces. Quick read, vote, move on or not. And we were talking last half hour about Democrats and their posture and what they can do to provide any sort of positive impact. You said it was like how many hundred bills from the right side of the aisle versus the left, just out of the House chamber. That this was a watermark, a clear watermark high for Democrats to have. Would you say 17?
Yeah, we have 17 that crossed over. Actually, I think one is passed. One Senate bill is in that 17.
Yeah.
Has passed out of the House. So 16 on crossover day was a record as far as I can remember. And right now we're at 260. I'm sorry, I said earlier it's 243. I was looking at the wrong picture. As of yesterday, 262 Republican sponsored bills have passed out of the House compared to 17.
Now you've done a lot of work, putting folks up for office and running folks and backing candidates, specifically women, in some districts where victory is achievable and commendable. That is fantastic. We've had Melita Easters on from the Georgia Win List many times. It's fantastic to see these sort of activities happening. I've been to a couple of Run for Something events to see like what the future holds. Do we have candidates in the pipeline? We just saw over the weekend where Representative Takema Williams, my congresswoman, that is her full-time job, stepped down from her other full-time job, which was heading the Georgia Democratic Party. And you also mentioned how Georgia Democrats have been a lot better about messaging here this legislative session. I agree 1,000%. It was the one thing that I really harped on last fall when there was discussion about changeover at the party level, what to do, how they can better, serve their constituents and get the right messaging. You guys have done a commendable job on that. The social media efforts to educate your constituents is yeoman's work. I mean, just having a mic clip, for crying out loud, makes such a difference when you're doing social media versus yelling at a phone from 10 feet away in a loud, Capitol building. So that's all commendable. You also talked about the fact that when Minnesota Democrats finally held a majority, the things that they were able to accomplish just in their first term. And it reminds me of something that I've been saying for a while since the 2024 election. Democrats don't think big like that anymore. We don't have our Project 2025 or Project 2027 or 2029 or whatever it is. And I think that's something that Democrats really need to do. We need to show, here's what we would do if we were in charge versus what they're doing now that they are or have been. Any thoughts on that and the direction that the Georgia Democratic Party is headed, and what sort of person would you like to see heading the party? Not necessarily a specific name, but like the kind of individual you would like to see heading the party to put us in that trajectory.
So the person that this is my humble opinion and what I've learned through campaigns, and I wish it wasn't this way. I wish we could get money out of politics, but the number one criteria that I see for the chair of the Democratic Party is the ability to raise large sums of money.
Yeah.
we cannot compete without it. And so all of the rest kind of falls by the wayside. And if you raise a lot of money, you can hire the best comms team. And so I do think we're already starting to shift our message. Our Democratic caucus, this session, our tagline was, we want Georgians to be able to live, learn, and earn. And lots of things fall under those categories. We still can cover, gun safety and reproductive freedom under those categories, but we're also we heard the message from the election cycle last time that perhaps we weren't talking about kitchen table issues and economic issues the way we needed to, and so we've shifted, at least our House caucus. I'm not, I'm a member of the Democratic Party. I can't speak to what their plans are. I do believe you're going to see when you've got somebody in that role that can actually earn an income and do that job. I would like to think that we're going to not only will that honor our kind of philosophy of people need to be paid for their worth, but hopefully we will get somebody in that can do the things that we need to do, which is, lead all of the teams, the comms teams and everybody else, but also raise the money necessary for us to start winning these races.
You mentioned compensation too. A friend of mine was on social media the other day opining that we don't have enough working class people running for state elective office. And you can't live in Vidalia if you're a plumber and leave your job for 40 days for a compensation that's less than $20,000. You can't live on that. And so that
you cannot.
That's a bit of a problem. And I'm not saying that let's make this some fat cat, tidy, work 40 days and make $50,000 a year, sort of salary. But you being an attorney, you can do that. You can move your dates around. There are people who are retired or just independently wealthy. It doesn't matter to them that they miss 40 consecutive or 8 weeks of work or not working or being retired. But if you're a blue collar, middle class person with an income, you're not protected from losing your job from being gone for 8 weeks. And I think that sort of skews the representation that we see, not just in Atlanta, but in other state houses and in Washington as well.
It's funny. In Atlanta, I've seen newer folks that are not the standard independently wealthy.
Yeah.
We've got teachers and we've got oh goodness.
Because we're driving. It's driving distance. If you're nearby, it's easy.
Yes, but even that, I think we've seen more diversity of jobs and things coming in over since I've been there, for sure, since 2021. But I do think it's harder coming from further out. But I don't know that they care further out, right? Because the Georgia legislature was set up for kind of the good old boys to come, and it's like a business network for them, and it's a way for them, right? And so I don't know that that's what they're looking for. I think that's what Democrats look for. I'll be honest. But I do think that anybody who says this job is part-time, I don't know how they're doing it part-time. Yes, I'm an attorney. I'm a founding member of my law firm, but I don't know that I've billed, 10 hours since I started running for office in 2018. I am blessed that my husband/law partner supports me and allows me to do this. I'm going to have to start adding to the household bottom line here shortly again, because every year I'm like, oh, but I've got to do this and I've got to do that. But this year I've got to get back to it. But it's been I've given up a lot of personal income, not just do I not make anything, to do this job and to do it the way I think it needs to be done. And so I think we need to be paid more, and I would love to see us on a different schedule, not full time, because I understand it's too far to drive for that. But, if we could be here every quarter for a number of weeks or something, so that we had more time to actually talk to each other and work on legislation. Because when we get some of the bills that I read are some of the most poorly written things I've ever seen. That's not a slam to Ledge Council, because sometimes legislators just demand that things be written a certain way, which makes no sense to me. We have fewer lawyer legislators than we've had in a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that while we shouldn't all be lawyers, I do think we're trained for certain strategies and to review things more efficiently.
Mm-hmm.
And
listen, you're talking to a residential realtor who is asked to write things all the times on contracts, and I'm like, I'm not qualified for this. Just being honest.
Actually practicing law without a license there, Ron. Be careful.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, you want me to write that amendment? I don't know what I'm doing.
Nope, you should not be doing that. You should have your broker's lawyer doing that. I'm also a licensed realtor, so don't do that, Ron.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm just going to find a form and find where somebody else has done this, and it's, and then run it by a broker's face and let them go on it.
Yeah, I think GAR has pretty extensive.
Yep, and gets more so
things you put in. Yeah.
Yep, and gets more so every year. Absolutely. So my last question, I'm going to let you go because I know you got a busy day. The appearance of there being fractures within the Democratic Party, I think, is overblown. I think we've had a lot of introspection since the results of the 2024 election. What we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. The issue is that, in my mind, we are a mosaic of people and efforts and initiatives and causes, and we're not always going to be on the same page. But we covered exhaustively on this show the trans fights, the circular firing squad situation that happened, I think, with Senator Elena Parent, and one trans activist was just overblown. And I'm like, if we can't be united, and we're going to target our advocates, our allies who are serving, then we're not going to get anywhere. And I think the Cop City situation really hurt Democrats in Metro Atlanta. And I think, the Gaza situation affected Democrats across the country, specifically in Michigan. And how do we do this? It's like herding kittens. I get it. We're not all moving in the same direction. But how do we, in your mind, stay the course and be at least somewhat united to realize it's all of us against them? They're not the majority, but they are more cohesive than we are, and that's what's hurting us.
So I don't think they're as cohesive either, but I'll come back to that. So we've got to get rid of this litmus test that if you don't agree with me on one thing, that you're not Democrat enough.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that all of us have felt it down at the state house level on some issue or another. And when you come from a very Democratic district where you could vote, on something insane and not lose your seat, it's much easier to criticize those of us who had to claw. It took me twice to win my seat. I won by 337 votes. I've been redistricted, so now my seat is safer than it was. But we have to start acknowledging that we know our districts, especially on the state legislative level. We know our districts. We know the people in our districts. We know who votes for us. We know what they care about because we've lived in these communities. And just because on one issue, we might be a little off than the most progressive part of the party, we've got to acknowledge that if we lose our seat,
can't help them at all.
Can't help them at all. We live to fight another day if we hold on to our seat. And
1,000%.
There is a difference in philosophy, I think, within our party that some are like, no, it's ride or die. But when you're in a position where a bill is going to pass, but you might be able to make it a little less bad, or that's what we try to do sometimes, and that gets interpreted as we're not Democrat enough. And so, but I think Gaza was probably, and Israel was the biggest one. But think about it, both sides of that issue, this good, it's been centuries old.
Yeah.
dispute.
You're going to lose voters on one way, on one direction or the
Well,
other.
they're all hurting so
Yes.
bad, and they're
Yes.
all
Yes.
so scared for their loved ones wherever
Yes.
they are.
Yes.
That there's no rational thinking in that, and the Republicans use that
They do.
against us.
1,000%.
It's gross. It's gross. They set us up for votes that they know are going to divide us, and it's a no-win situation sometimes because they control the dialogue down there.
And at the same time, we talked about like the moderate, centrist, conservative, or progressive. In my mind, I think one of the biggest mistakes made in this party, and this is not at the state level, but this is more at the postmortem of the 2016 convention, and we didn't bridge that divide then, and I think it's only exacerbated, and we've seen people, I think, peel off from the party, disaffected progressives who just don't see the party as even listening to them, let alone offering them a seat at the table or participation in the process. I think that's a huge mistake. And so how to rectify that while also, as you say, trying to stay in office so that you can mitigate the harm, to live to see another day, to do some good when the numbers are better in favor. It's a tightrope walk.
It is. And none of us want to legislate based on worrying about whether a mailer is going to say something about us. But there are some messages that are so seen so strongly that, sometimes we have to make that call. But we do the best that we can. I know that every single one of my colleagues down there is there trying to fight the good fight and to do the best they can for hardworking Georgians. And we will continue to do that. We will continue to shine a light and show what we will do when we take the majority.
All right. Well, I know you got to head back to work there and fight the good fight to fend off more offensive, literally offensive legislation, not just offensive defensive, but offensive legislation on some way, shape, form, or fashion. So go down there and try and mitigate the harm and do some good today. I appreciate your time on the Ron Show today. Cousin Representative Shea Roberts.
Thank you, cousin. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Bye.
My thanks again for Representative Shea Roberts giving us just a big old chunk of time this morning. It was so good of her to do that. Cousin Shea. We were trying to find some legislation that she could feel good about. And one that I think actually she should feel good about is House Bill, I think it's House Bill 399. Let me find this. Representative Mary Margaret Oliver had pushed this one through that requires landlords who aren't residents of Georgia and own 25 or more single-family homes to ensure that there's a local agent available to receive complaints from tenants. Like somebody is actually here in the state to lodge a complaint that something needs to be addressed, something needs to be fixed. Now, I'm reading from Michelle Baruchman's article at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that spoke to some of the legislation that Democrats and even Republicans tried to pass that limited like hedge fund ownership, LLCs from owning mass quantities of homes in the state of Georgia. Those bills didn't make it, but Mary Margaret Oliver's, which is just a small step here, at least would legislate some accountability for some of these large hedge fund companies or LLCs that own these equity companies that we faceless owning tens of thousands of homes here in the state of Georgia would at least have to put a face, put a human body, a human being here in the state to provide some accountability for tenants to get things addressed. Michelle Baruchman writing that although it wouldn't directly address affordability, Mary Margaret Oliver said it's a small step to hold those companies accountable to local residents. She said, the issue of accountability of out-of-state investors is of growing significance in our state. Baruchman writes, there are 7 entities that own more than 51,000 single-family homes in Georgia, according to Mary Margaret Oliver. And she gets that with data from the Atlanta Regional Commission. Gwinnett County, according to Oliver, is the number 1 county in Georgia for acquisition, and in Oliver's legislative district, more than 1,000 homes are owned by out-of-state investors. She said, if you're a young family looking to purchase a home, these investors are taking assets out of Georgia. They're making a profit on the rents charged. They're making a profit on the acceleration of values, and that profit is not being enjoyed by Georgia families. She's right. And so while her bill doesn't necessarily address that issue, Representative Phil Ololaye in Fulton County did try to pass a bill that would have limited hedge fund ownership in the state. It did not get a vote, so here we are. having to take incrementalism and being happy with it. Anyway, that's one. It's not something you're going to go dancing in the streets. There's not going to be confetti cannons or anything like that, but it's something. It is something. There's also some movements in the 2026 Georgia gubernatorial race. Lucy McBath has sought to suspend her bid for governor, at least for the time being. Greg Bluestein reporting that she's stepping back from a run for Georgia's governor's race, saying in an interview Monday that she's focusing on her husband's health as he undergoes treatment for complications from a recent cancer diagnosis. Our best to him on that. McBath didn't rule out the gubernatorial bid, but told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution she's suspending the exploratory committee she launched weeks ago. She did tell Bluestein she's not going to be stepping down from the House seat, but for, quote, right now, I have to organically look at everything and make sure I'm where I'm most needed. Certainly understand that. My father retired immediately when my mother's cancer diagnosis came to us. And that was his priority. Certainly understandable here. Bluestein opines that other potential contenders for the gubernatorial primary on the Democratic side include Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. Come on, no. State Senator Jason Estevez. I like that guy. And former DeKalb Chief Executive Michael Thurman, who I need to get on this show. Also, two-time nominee Stacey Abrams, according to Bluestein, who twice lost to Kemp, hasn't ruled out a third campaign. At this point, I would have to opine that Stacey Abrams, so much appreciation for the work that she did to work on voter registration, to organize, galvanize movements here in the state of Georgia. Close, no cigar, 2018. Not as close in 2022. I then said I don't really believe that her campaign was a well-run campaign. Seemed to focus solely on blue safe areas and not going out and collecting votes in exurban and rural counties. I would say that, again, much appreciated, but this would be like Hillary Clinton deciding she wanted to run in 2020. Ma'am, much appreciated, but you've taken too many quills, too many arrows, there's too much damage done, and unfortunately, right out the gate, you have 48% opposition, and as the campaign goes on, that's only going to grow. It's not her fault. It's nothing she did wrong. It's just where we are now, and it seems like it might be time. Listen, with Democrats taking losses as they've taken at the state level for as long as they have, it's in my mind, it's time to turn a page. Which is why I really like Jason Estevez. Jason and his wife, both small business owners, lovely family, beautiful kids. He's got a great track record, both legislatively and in a business fashion. And if he can work on messaging and growing his appeal outside of his Senate district, name recognition being a big thing, and I guess throwing your hat in the ring as early as possible would probably help that. I think that he is one that Democrats should look to. And I even said that when Lucy McBath was flirting with the idea of running for governor as well. Not so sure that that's the brand, the personality. She is likened to being a single-issue voter, of course, fighting gun violence as long as she has as a grieving mother. And then there's the jockeying for her position in Congress. Sonia Halpern had sort of said, well, if she's going to run for governor, I'm going to run for her congressional seat. And then you have to think, waiting in the wings, perhaps, would be former Cobb County Commissioner, the one who got drawn out of her commission seat. We heard Representative Shea Roberts talking about the Georgia GOP drawing commissioners out of seats in Cobb and Gwinnett County. Jerica Richardson, who made a primary effort against Lucy McBath last election cycle, could step forward again if McBath either isn't going to run for that congressional seat or is going to seek the governor's seat once her husband's health has completely recovered. Anyway, that is a lot to mull over. Again, my thanks to Representative Shea Roberts for joining us. We'll have show notes, as always, at ronshowatl.com. The show airs 9 a.m., 5 p.m. weekdays on America One Radio, in case you missed part of it. 11 p.m. Progressive Voices via TuneIn, and then we podcast that bad boy. Questions, comments, 404-919-2725, ron at ronshowatl.com. Take care. See you tomorrow.